Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam and Doug assemble the complete long block in the Alpha 1 GTO. In this phase, the cylinder heads are bolted to the engine block and torqued down to factory spec. With the heads in place, the valve train and timing components are then installed, completing the engine build.
You know, I did an awful lot of research before I decided to use this motor. This was my brother's engine, and having the ability to fit inside of this car and to do everything sentimentally means an awful lot to me. And the build has just come out absolutely spectacular. I'm really looking forward to getting in the car and feeling the horsepower and the torque this thing produces.
Me too. That's going to be totally cool. Now, as you can see, we've used ARP bolts everywhere that counts on this engine, and things don't change when you're tightening things like oil pan, timing covers, or valve covers. You always want to go from the middle out, spanning the metal out to the edges. And you want to make sure that you go back and torque everything twice, because when you're dealing with a rubber gasket, you're going to compress it. Then when you go back to the middle ones, the first few you tightened, it's going to be loose. So you got to go back through maybe 3 times.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, normally when I'm putting these things together, I'm really taking my time, because if you don't, you're more prone to have leaks. And if you take your time, you adjust it, you torque it a little bit, you come back, you torque it again, take a look at how you're doing it. When you get the engine done, you won't have any leaks.
Whenever you're putting on heads on a motor, you want to clean the deck and the bottom surface of the head. When you do that, you're going to get a little bit of lint no matter what rag you use. So you clean it off with a good brake cleaner, then you go in with shop air and get all the lint off so that when you put your heads on, it's nice and clean.
Yeah, another tech tip that you'll have is a long time, if you're getting ready to build a motor, it says check number 1, check for top dead center. You want to know which is number 1. The easiest way to do it when you're doing a V8, if I take a look at both of my heads, I have one head slightly in front of the other. The head that's the farthest forward, this would be number 1 cylinder. Interesting tech tip.
ARP head bolts are so strong that you can reuse them a few times. But after the second time, make sure to check it with a stretch dial indicator so that to make sure it's not stretching on you. Then you'll know whether to replace it or not.
It's real important when you're going ahead and you're setting up your valves that you make sure that your push rod lengths are correct. Because if they're not correct and you're loading one side, you're going to go ahead and wear out the valve guide. So you want uniform travel of this across the valve stem back and forth. So make sure it's always in the center.
You want to check it with the cylinder where the cam is on base circle, okay? Like for instance, this one right here.
Yeah, and when he's talking about the camshaft, he's talking about the base circle. If you look at any camshaft, the way it's designed, it's got a base circle and then it moves up a large hump, then it comes back to the base circle. It's that base circle that you want to make sure that that's in the neutral position, because then you're not opening the valve or closing the valve.
But if you don't know, you want to rotate the motor so you do know, so that you do your measurements correctly. When you put this push rod in, it's a little bit short. Rod sits like this, the rocker arm sits a little high, and when it goes to open, it's going to actually come off of the tip of the valve stem. So it's a good idea to take an adjustable push rod like I have here and adjust it, right? Then you can see exactly the geometry, make sure you can even put it in place, spin the motor, make sure it's riding in the middle of the valve stem, staying on top of the valve stem. Then you take your measurement with your push rod, order your push rods, then adjust your valves. So make sure you do this part right. Well, Doug, what do you think? That looks pretty good, huh?
Oh, it looks excellent.
It turned out nice. You know, being that it's a 347, it's going to make a lot of horsepower and torque in a small package that's going to fit nicely in that car. And we want to make sure the intake manifold that we use is going to give us a European flair.
Right, yeah, we're going to be looking at with a fuel injection system onto it, using throttle bodies, a Weber type setup, except it'll be fuel injection. We got to measure all of our heights, make sure everything fits correctly under the hood, use the right type of fuel management system onto it, but it's going to have a really sweet look for a 250 GTO running a Ford motor.